fell in love with a woman after a one-night stand. Everything blew up in my face at the family reunion. I woke up with my head throbbing and a stranger in my bed. She scared me so bad I nearly fell out of the bed. As I looked around I slowly realized it wasn't my bed. I was in a hotel or motel of some kind. There were suitcases that were half unpacked on the floor. Clothes strewn about. She was beautiful. I just stared at her for a couple of seconds trying to figure out if I should be alarmed or proud of myself. She was like Michelle Rodriguez in the first Fast and Furious movie. I was more like Vin Diesel after the 10th one. It was astonishing. I knew my powers of seduction were great, but this was a different level. I was suspicious. I decided to just take the win and get out of there. I had a family reunion later that day and I didn't want to get made fun of for hours on end. As I was leaving my memory started coming back in waves. We had matched on Tinder and she told me she was in town for business. The rest was story. I was absolutely chatting in the DMs. Either I was drunk or it was just past 2 a.m. because it got critical in the messages. Another massive W for the Funny Kings. On my way back home I was floating. Forget Cloud 9, I was on like Cloud 14 at least. I had that ChatGPT. Jesus Shuttlesworth level game. Grand Wizard. I thought about changing my Instagram username to Spitter Magoo. I had that glow. I was smelling like fish sticks. Life was good. I was in heaven. Some dude cut me off in traffic and I just thought, he probably had a good reason. I hope everything's okay. The best part was that I probably was never going to see her again. Pump and dump. Slip and slide. Shoot and scoot. However I sliced it, I was out of there. I got back to my residence and took a quick shower before I turned around and went to the reunion. I was never excited for these things because I have like 200 cousins whose names I can never remember when they first greet me. But like I said, today was different. Homie pulled up to the Gonzalez family function with a smile on his face. Yup. Yup. I was a man born again. I dapped up my parentals. I greeted my aunties and their suspicious cholo boyfriends. I was having a blast. Then the entire vibe switched up. My Uncle Chewy appeared out of nowhere and gave me a hard noogie. I loved my uncle, don't get me wrong. But he was one of those guys that overcompensated for something by being roided up and hypermasculine. He would always make fun of me for being low-key queer-coded and fat. Today was gonna be different. I told him all about my experience the night before. He was proud. Another W. He told me that he was engaged and his fiancée was coming to the reunion at some point. She was coming in today. The Gonzalez men were winning. In an instant the winning was over. In the crowd of bald heads and mustaches, I caught a glimpse of familiar beauty. Michelle Rodriguez? No. Maya from Tinder. Oh no. Homie had just pumped and dumped his cousin. This couldn't be. My heart was pumping hard when my uncle waved her over. I want to introduce you to someone. Little did he know. This is my fiancée, Patrice. Patrice? She was Maya to me the night before. I was shaking as I reached out to shake her hand that had a new engagement ring on it. She said, "Nice to meet you." Yeah, okay, Patrice. I felt betrayed. I was on cloud 4 now. The highs and lows of being an absolute G. The tension was ridiculous the rest of the day. I am in a bad mood now. Every time I couldn't remember the name of an obscure cousin, it only got worse. Toward the end of the night I found myself in a conversational circle with my uncle, my parentals and the liar dirtbag scumbucket. I hated her. I knew where this was going. She was going to be responsible for the downfall of the Gonzalez family. My uncle started ripping on me. He called me the usual names. Said the usual things. I escalated it by talking about how he was compensating for his shriveled manhood by getting more tribal tattoos. He fired back by saying I was probably lying about my night last night because there was no way I had ever felt the touch of a woman. Big mistake, homie. I decided to get it poppin'. This was only going to end one way. My whole life had been building up to this confrontation with the final boss. I looked him in the eyes and said, "Why don't you ask your fiancé if I'm lying about last night?" He laughed it off like it was a joke. Homie thought it was merely a jest. This was no light banner. I stared him down with a straight face to let this fool know I meant business. His smile faded. He looked at Patrice, who was too shocked to get the words out. He knew what was good. He threw his drink on the ground and stood up. My parents didn't move. Typical Gonzalez activities. I stood up and stared at him eye to eye. Homie was on his grown man business. I wasn't about to back down. He stared at me for a second. Then he whipped around and slapped the daylights out of Patrice. Homie was on his domestic violence. We couldn't have that. I jumped on him to restrain him. Finally, my dad did something and helped me. We separated them, and just like that it was over. They both started crying. They turned the family reunion into a telenovela. We thought about calling the cops on homie, but Patrice told us not to. She took off her ring and placed it into my sniffling uncle's pocket. Then she kissed him on the forehead like a baby. She left the scene like she was in an R&B music video. That was the last time I ever saw her. My uncle doesn't make fun of me anymore because I stole his girl. I wonder what the next family reunion will be like.